turning to safety, we've had 14 homicides this year, and that's putting us on track for this to be the deadliest year we've seen in 5 years. Most of those occur outside of the tourism district, but obviously there was the one incident with a mother and daughter being stabbed within the limits. Do you really believe that the city's safer now with the tourism district in place? And what kind of impact is this having, at least on tourist perceptions, if nothing else?
Yeah. Well, anytime there's a violent crime, it hurts the city's reputation, and it affects visitation. And we live in an urban area, and we've got to deal with the hard realities associated with these kinds of events happening occasionally. Now, you talk about the incidents of the homicide within the city's limits, and I know that can be disturbing, but I think it's got to be understood in context, Jennifer. For instance, we entertain upwards of 28, 29 million visitors a year. So beyond the limits of the city's population, which is 40,000 plus or minus, millions of people come here every year, and so we behave like a much bigger place than you would imagine. And with that, sometimes, comes crime, and we're doing our best, obviously, to address issues that create a better environment, a more a friendlier and more hospitable environment for visitors. And yeah, we are achieving success. Tom Gilbert, Commander Gilbert, former state police lieutenant colonel, has been assigned through the Attorney General's office to the district full-time. He's got a terrific working relationship with the police department and the sheriff's office. We, through Tom's efforts, have pledged over $3 million in financing to help support technology upgrades for the police department, and that we're beginning with a 411 system that encourages people to report crimes anonymously to us. We're doing other technology upgrades, planning to do upgrades including installation of cameras and other things that allow our public safety servants to communicate more effectively to one another and to work with the casino security people. We've got 25 dedicated Class 2 police officers to the district. We've got the ambassador, certainly that number has been enhanced dramatically, and so I think we're in a much better place, but we've got to keep working at it. There isn't any question, but that more needs to be done. But I am very, very confident that we're moving in the right direction. And we're beginning to collect information as well, Jennifer, that allows us to create some metrics around how we're doing to affect the environment for visits, and how that the security environment is being enhanced as well. And we'll be reporting on that. I believe that we're preparing to go out with a survey, for instance, to begin to measure, maybe on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, people's perceptions. All of that is going to be very helpful. For visitors
Mm-hmm.
and residents. And we've been talking to Stockton about that, the polling center, the Hughes, I'm forgetting the Public Policy Center. So we're doing everything that we can to understand and to be effective in managing the district and creating the most hospitable environment that we can.
The South Inlet redevelopment project, which is going to bring the housing and shops and restaurants to that neighborhood surrounding Revel, relies in part on an investment from Revel. What happens to that project if the financing doesn't materialize?
Yeah, well, we are relying on Revel to create an income stream that will allow us to either borrow or bond debt of up to $50 million in the first phase, at least, and that may grow to a few hundred million over time. But we've begun by identifying a gamut of improvements that we'll be able to execute with $50 million based on receipts that can be forecast over the next 20 years. And we used pretty conservative judgments. We've been working with the Economic Development Authority. They've been representing our interests in negotiating with the banks to allow us to borrow money so that we can begin that first phase, which will allow us to create a park next to the lighthouse and to acquire some of the blighted properties that exist and assemble some new parcels for development. And so, yeah, it does require that we secure some financing to do that. And we haven't yet landed on an amount, but our expectation is that we'll qualify for about $50 million, and that will allow us to really get started in doing all those things that the redevelopment plan in the South Inlet calls for, at least in the first phase. And Stockton's expressed interest, and there have been a few developers who own parcels who've come to us and said, listen, we think we may want to do a residential building or some retail. So along with the park that we do and some of the demolition that we do and creating a better environment for development and investment, we'll be in a good position. But I would be less than forthright if I were to suggest that the funding is in hand. We're still working with EDA to do that. And of course, they're relying on assumptions of revenue that Revel generates. But I am optimistic that we're going to be able to do that quickly.
A number of the renters who will be relocated by that South Inlet project recently spoke out against the plan at a meeting that was organized by the local NAACP chapter and other groups. And the mayor's spoken at CRDA meetings in the past about a plan that would ensure that other housing can be created within the city. Yeah. Where does that plan stand?
Well, we've talked to the mayor about identifying other sites for development that would accommodate residential development. And we have agreed in principle. We haven't yet signed a letter of agreement, but we have discussed a few locations, swapping property that the city owns and providing the city with some property that might be suitable for that type of residential development. And so I'm confident, Jennifer, that we'll satisfy the city and provide beyond just the land swap that I imagine we'll be able to execute within the next few months, that we'll be able to support financially initiatives that will create some affordable and or workforce housing. So that's moving forward, and the mayor and I have had positive discussions. The point I'd make, the only other point that I'd make, is that when we approved the redevelopment plan, and the mayor expressed concerns, not reservations, but he said, listen, you've got to make sure that people who are displaced we will absolutely, whether or not we do any new development of housing, whether the mayor does it or we do it or the housing authority does it, we will ensure that every displaced tenant finds suitable, I'd say improved residential quarters within the city's limits. So there are enough housing units presently within the city of Atlantic City to satisfy any relocation family. So I'm confident, but beyond that, we have discussed with the mayor making some property available, some land available, so that he might be able to talk to the private sector about some new housing. And that's fine. That would be value added as far as I'm concerned, but it isn't going to, if that doesn't happen quickly, we are absolutely confident that we will find suitable replacement housing.